Hello and welcome to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, April 17th, 2018. As always, we are coming live from the W4CY studios here in West Palm Beach, and I hope everyone has had an amazing week so far. Well, today is the first day I've been back exercising in almost 2 weeks. And why? Because if you were listening to my last couple shows, you know about almost 2 weeks ago, I tore my hamstring during a championship game in softball. And and immediately as soon as I got home, I treated it with acupuncture and E-stem and massage. I've been upping my salt intake and vitamin K and all sorts of different things. And I did not stretch it because you never stretch a torn hamstring, or you never stretch a cramped hamstring. So I started treating it right away. And, this proves, if you don't think that acupuncture works, this always, I love acupuncture. It's the reason why I got into it, and it's the reason why I went to get my doctorate in it, was because, it's good stuff, and this is the proof. The day of the tear, I could barely walk on it. As soon as it tore, I fell down to the ground. People had to walk me to the bench. I used some kinetic tape and taped up my hamstring, kind of just played catcher, stood there. It was really hard for me to walk. People were, helping me walk to and from the dugout to the plate. And I just couldn't stand. And after 2 days of just acupuncture and the E-stem and massage, I was already back up on my feet. And of course, it still hurt. Of course, I wasn't going to go out there, and I've been taking it easy even today at the gym. But today, almost 2 weeks later, I think we're a couple days shy of 2 weeks, I'm back at the gym. And, I still feel a little bit. I'm not going to go crazy and everything like that. I still know that the muscles have to mend and everything. And that takes a couple weeks and stuff. And so, but this is proof that a lot of these things work, because one of the things that I always get asked, and I've been asked this quite a lot lately, does acupuncture really work? And I said, absolutely, it does. Anytime you, add a benefit like acupuncture, E-stem, or massage to an injury, especially if that someone knows what they're doing, absolutely, it does amazing work. It speeds up the process instantly. And I think that if I did not do the acupuncture or any of the things that I've been doing to myself, I still think that I would be behind the game, and I would still be having this nagging injury. I have a little bit of soreness in it. It's not painful. It didn't get all black and blue like sometimes when a real bad tear happens and that. But I'm very fortunate that I have the schooling and education to be able to help myself win. And this is why it's so important. This is why I try to teach you guys and try to let you guys know that in education and a lot of things, especially medicine and, when it comes to yourself, is really important, because when something happens, you know how to handle it. And it's amazing stuff when you don't have to go to the doctor bills and get examinations and spend all this money on insurance and everything, when you can kind of take care of things your own self. So, I'm still going to rest. I have another week off. I have no softball going on, and I have another week to go before our football playoffs, and I'm hoping within the next week I'll be back on my feet and be able to kick some butt on playoffs. So if you guys are hockey fans and you're looking at Periscope or you're looking at the YouTube channel, you'll know I have my Pittsburgh Penguins jersey on. And why is that? Because it's playoffs, baby. It is playoffs, and I am excited because I am excited for the Pens to win their third straight championship. I love hockey. Hockey is my favorite male sport, and it's great. It's fun. There's still a little fighting in there. It's still a little of excitement in that, and it's just a fast-paced game. And I just love the talent that you have to be a hockey player. It takes a team to win and stuff, and just how quickly, even if you are up by 4 or 5 goals, just one goal from the other team and just a little momentum shift could really change things around. And this year's playoffs is amazing because there are so many good teams. Over the last couple of years, there hasn't been really that many good teams, maybe one or two here, but the west side and the east side is stacked full of good teams this year. And it's make me a little worried. I still believe in my Pittsburgh Penguins. I think that they're going to do third straight, and if they don't, that's okay. Hey, 2 in a row is good. But this is going to be their most challenging ever because you got Boston and so many in Toronto and not Toronto. Tampa, and you have Tampa and so many other teams that that are good this year. So I'm wishing my Penguins there, and in lieu of that, I'm wearing my little jersey. So Chad, my man, how you doing?
Your Penguins?
Yes, my Penguins.
I thought you were from Chicago.
I am from Chicago, but you know what?
How's that work?
In the 1980s, I grew up liking Paul Coffey and Mario Lemieux.
All right. Must be hockey players.
Yes, hockey players, and Mario Lemieux is the best in the world. And I just fell in love. And the Blackhawks weren't anything good, and I just fell in love with those two players specifically, and Ron Francis, and I just became a Penguins fan since the 1980s.
Well, it's always good to be a Pittsburgh fan because whether it be football or hockey, they usually have success on their teams.
Yes.
And it's a funny thing, too. You go through like almost all of America, and you're always going to find some type of Pittsburgh bar.
Yes,
You know, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
They got good fans.
Absolutely. So how's everything going with you this week? Are you doing any gigs this week?
Can I be honest with you? It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Just kidding. We're having a great time. We're doing about 2 to 3 gigs a week. We got our Thursday night at Aruba Cafe. It seems the crowd seems to be growing for some reason. It's weird. Shouldn't everyone be getting back because I guess we still have snow.
Yeah.
There's still snow up north.
Yes.
So, we still have people coming into Aruba, like, from up north and, visiting down here and keeping warm. But it's weird. We just had a cold spell again.
Yes, we did, didn't we?
What was with that? It's like 95 degrees one day, and the next it's, 50.
I know.
I don't get that.
That's another reason why I grabbed this jersey, because today's a little chilly out.
You don't know. It's like a coin toss now. But anyhow, all's good. No complaints. Good to see you again. Missed you last week.
Yes, missed you too. I was busy. I'll admit, I actually forgot to kind of come up with a show. I was so busy with things. I just forgot. I was like, oh my God, today's Tuesday. And I was like, I haven't prepared anything.
You couldn't just snap one up?
No. Well, I could, but I just, with my health and everything and feeling, healthier this past couple weeks, I didn't want to push myself and stress myself out and cause some,
That's very important, people.
Yes.
To pace yourselves and not to overdo it, because you will destroy yourself.
Yes, especially if you're sick and trying to get healthy.
It just won't work.
Absolutely.
Good advice. On with the show.
All right, people. If you'd like to give us a call and put in your 2 cents, I'd love it. At 561-623-9429. You can web chat us on the W4CY.com website or download the W4CY radio app. Or you can follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/Transcendental Transformation. We are also streaming live on Periscope. It's an app. Go to your app things and download Periscope and find us at Transcendental 13. All right, everybody, enough funny talk. Let's get into tonight's show because, this is such an important show. They're all important, aren't they? They're always something, when it comes to us, we have to really take a look at ourselves. And this is the one thing that, we really don't do. We really don't, we have become a society where we don't like to look at our faults, or we don't like to look at the challenges that we have, and we kind of shy away from it. And we think if we distract ourselves with TV or sports or whatever, that everything just goes away, but it doesn't do that. And, a long time ago, I did a show similar to this, maybe a couple years ago, 3 years ago. And, and I wanted to talk about how we can be, as a conscious person, living our lives without fear. Because, a lot of times when we face our fears, it's because of fears will create some way of of chaos through disbelief or through our belief systems that, may be false, that make us lie in the sense to our own minds to keep us from the truth. And so I always ask the question, why are so many of us are afraid to live our own authentic lives? Why are so many of us are afraid to be ourselves? Why do we hide behind our egos and these personas and these ideas of trying to be cool or trying to be, fit in or trying to be liked and everything? Why do we chase all these things? And, when our fear starts and when it starts to develop in us, how do we recognize it if we're living a life in fear? Because if I ask people, are you an honest person? Of course, everyone's going to say honest. I mean, it's very, very rare that someone's honest and says, no, I lie at times. And, there are times I don't say what I mean and da-da-da, and maybe stretch the truth here and there. And if I say, well, do you live your life as you are? Of course, everyone's going to say yes, except for a few people, but the truth is we don't. And it's very hard to. And a lot of times we fool ourselves into thinking that we do, because sometimes we think that the truth and facing ourselves and being our authentic self is even tougher than it's not. But let me tell you, the first thing I want to say is it's what you waste so much energy putting on this facade. You waste so much energy trying to contain the chaos of fear and insecurity and anxiety and everything than you would if you were to be yourself. And for most of us, fear is natural. It's an everyday occurrence. It grabs us by our life and it cripples us. And I know personally from somebody who has dealt with claustrophobia and agoraphobia and many forms of anxiety, and not meaning like having a life of fear, but just anxiety in itself. I know what fear can do to you. I know what it's like to, wake up in the day, have things happen to you, and you lose your trust in humanity, you lose your trust in each other, your relationships and stuff, and then you're out to prove to the world that you're tougher than you are, and really you're just producing more chaos in our life. And we have to, and we don't really realize that it's got a stranglehold on us. And so we have to look at it and sometimes say, well, where does the separation have to happen? When do we have to start looking at ourselves? When do we have to start recognizing ourselves and allow the stranglehold of fear to release on us? Our dreams most of the time, if we look, I don't know how, I made a comment the other day on social media, and very few times do I ever make comments like this, but I've noticed that there's a bunch of people that I've come in contact with over maybe the past few months, and I've noticed that so many people have sat there and said, oh, I don't know why, things aren't going for me. I just don't get why doors aren't opening and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden I see life or the universe or whatever you want to blame it on, opening doors for them, and then they find some way to sabotage it. They find some way to create an idea where they're getting screwed over, or someone's out to get them, or it's not the way it needs to be, and then they become so picky about it out of fear that they actually sabotage the door that opens up. They close it and then slam it, and they're like, bam. And then they look, well, why isn't things happening to me? And if you look at your life and you say, well, yeah, I haven't reached my goals. I'm this age. I should have been able to, been here by now. I should have done this by now. I feel unfulfilled. I feel broken, and where, this is what I'm saying, where even if we envy successful people, we're not understanding, we're looking at ourselves and we're saying, well, why aren't these doors opening? If I'm looking at someone successfully and I'm becoming jealous of them, if I'm becoming, resentful of them, or if I'm just looking at them in spite and saying, hey, well, what's different between them and me? Well, the difference is because they're living in less fear than you are. And sometimes even our fears will create an idea of drive into us that may take us to a place of success, but then when that success stops, it all falls apart. And sometimes if we ask ourselves daily, and how many of you actually do this, and just be honest, how many of us ask ourselves, why don't I have the things that somebody else has? And so if you ask yourself this, or if you think yourself as one of these people, And then what you've really done is you've really developed destructive patterns. You have developed the idea of the mind of patterns in order for you to sit there and say, well, my fear has control. My go-to emotion is fear. My go-to emotion is doubt. My go-to emotion is one of those where, if something's put in front of me, I'm going to try to overanalyze it so many ways or run from it immediately that because I don't want to get hurt or I don't want something to happen to me, that I'd rather not have it than have it. And so many of us do that. And this is one of the things that we have to do. Anybody that feels unfulfilled has destructive patterns. And one of the things that we have to do is recognize it. We have to be able to say, you know what, yes, Miss Raina's right, or whoever coach you have, or whoever you're working with, or if you're just thinking on yourself, you sit there and say, well, yes, this is true. I have destructive patterns. I keep things from myself because, whether it be the truth or an idea or a job or a relationship, I keep these ideas from me because I don't deserve it. Because I'm afraid that if I go for something, I'm either going to fail, I'm going to, someone's going to hurt me, or I'm not going to understand it, I'm going to look stupid, or people aren't going to accept me for what I am or who I am or the ideas that I have. And, it's a scary world. I mean, people, like, I do a radio show that a lot of people don't understand what I'm talking about, and and it's okay. I'm still doing my thing, and that's the thing that you have to understand is whatever it is you want to do, whether it is something similar to me or a different thing, anytime you go against the grain, anytime you have a different thought system, and maybe your thought system is correct on an idea, and maybe people just haven't understood it in that sense, but anytime you go against what is normally accepted in society, you are going to get some form of backlash. And that isn't a knock on you. And it should never be a knock on you. You should never sit there and say, oh, well, because it's the first response for people living in fear to put blame on somebody else or to make fun of it. I mean, and that's what we have to look at. If I sit there and I say I have a destructive pattern, and my destructive pattern is fear of keeping me away because someone's going to laugh at me or stop me from doing what I want to do, well, then you're looking at the pattern, or you're looking at the destructive pattern in a way where you're putting yourself in that victim mode instead of looking at the situation for what it really is. We'll be right back after these messages from the life of Raina.
A message from the life of Raina. We live in a world faced with many tough challenges. Our lives become chaotic and filled with disaster ever so quickly, most of the time before we even realize. Our issues beat down our mental mindset, and an imbalance of emotions become prevalent. The life of Raina is dedicated to helping people on the deepest spiritual level. Miss Raina, the creator of Transcendental Development and Growth, works on your core issues and finds the solutions which allow you to break free from the emotional bondages of life, helping you achieve the life you've always wanted to live. Isn't it time that you lived life for you? Call the Life of Raina, 561-846-2190, and schedule your appointment today. That's 561-846-2190. Or email thelifeofraina@icloud.com.
All right, everybody, we are back. I actually need some water. If you couldn't tell, I was so dehydrated trying to talk that I had to go to commercial early. But you are listening to Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina. We are, actually, if you want to call us in at 561-623-9429. Share your story, share your thoughts, whatever, or web chat me on the w4cy.com website. So we are talking about how we live in fear and why so many of us are afraid to live our authentic self through this idea of fear. And we were talking about destructive patterns before we went to break. And one of the things that I ask somebody is, if you're afraid, if you live in fear, why are you so afraid of living your authentic self? And they look at me and they may come up with ideas and stuff, and I say the first thing that we look at is responsibility. It is, we have to take responsible, or be responsible for, who we are, what we are, where we want to go, who we want to date, and so many different ideas. We have to take 100% responsibility in everything we do. And I know that's scary because we like to put blame on ideas and, and play the victim sometimes and say, well, they did this to me, or it's because of this, or if I do this, I'm going to get punished by this God or this idea or the law of karma or this or that, and we put so many ideas out there that we don't really take responsibility. And you have to start taking responsibility for anything that you do. If you're not living your authentic self, or you're walking, or if you're living in fear or walking away from truth in life, then it's because you refuse to take responsibility for yourself. And that may be hard to hear, but it is true. And the moment you take responsibility for yourself is where you're going to see the change. Because people always ask, well, I've made the choice. Yes, I want change, but change doesn't happen. Yeah, I don't want to live this way, but it doesn't happen. Everything but. Well, the number one thing that you didn't do first is make a conscious choice that I'm going to start taking responsibility for my actions, for my thoughts, for what happens in my life. And even if something happens where someone walks up, and punches me in the face or something crazy like that, I'm still going to take responsibility to how I'm going to respond to it. And, and we can't be afraid of the outcomes. We can't look at that. We can't sit there and say, well, if I'm going to take responsibility but be afraid of the outcomes, we can't do it. You have to start, realizing that the outcomes are just perceptions in your mind. And every form of this perception is going to be some form of judgment. And we've talked about judgment so many times on the show, but I try to tie it into everything because you realize that no matter what you do, taking responsibility and the way your perception is through your judgments create all the chaos. If you perceive something as fearful, then you've created that, and you've created that form of chaos, and then the responsibility, the fear, and everything come with it. I mean, not the non-responsibility, the fear, and everything comes with it. But if we're afraid to take responsibility for the actions, well, what if it doesn't happen, Miss Raina? What happens if I go out there and I do things and it doesn't happen? Well, again, what are we setting ourselves up for? A lot of us, in business alone, if we take business, because I like to use business, if we take business alone, if you have this idea that, I'm going to start a business and then it's going to just grow and do this, most people, if you want to use the term fail and success, which I don't like those because those are judgments in themselves, but most people, the most successful people in the world failed 10,000 times to their one time that they've been successful. And all it takes is that one time, and you have to evolve with it. Anything in your life, you have to evolve. And that's the problem in life. We don't evolve. We are conditioned to our belief systems when we're young, and we don't evolve as we do. And it doesn't allow us to evolve because we sit there and we say, well, this is the way life is. We already know everything about life, so we can't. And that's so far from the truth. If the belief systems that you have, and I'm not just talking about religious, I'm talking about everything in life, the way you perceive things, what you judge, what you think is right or wrong or good or bad, all that stuff. If things aren't happening for your life and you're looking at that stuff and those things are blocking you, then how are you not taking responsibility for it? Well, what if I fail? What if I get rejected? What if, I start something and nobody likes it? Well, you know what? Hey, I have done so many things in my life, and you know what? Most of them have failed. I have had success in certain parts of my business, sometimes certain times in my business, and sometimes it's been really rough. Does that mean I'm a failure? No, absolutely not. Does that mean that I wasn't successful in these areas, or the times I was making money, or the times I had, thousands of clients and stuff, all of a sudden, I'm successful, and when I don't have thousands of clients, I'm not successful? No, absolutely not. But the idea of fear comes from that perception of you not taking responsibility. It is an excuse for you not to do what you want to do. And you have to sit there and stop giving yourself excuses. You have to sit there and say, you know what? I take full responsibility for everything in my life. Even if I'm driving in a car and someone slams into me or something like that, I take full responsibility for everything that happens in my life. Because we can sit there and say, well, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this, and find a way why we can't work, why we can't do what we do. I mean, our mind will create these perceptions, and keep us that victim. I tell you, if that victim part of your ego, is always ready to choke you, they're always ready to put a stranglehold on you and make sure that you don't do anything in your life because it wants control. So when are you going to start taking control of it? Are you always going to allow your minds and your patterns, or your patterns in your minds, to control you and dictate you? Just because, and I say this all the time, just because you're taught something, it doesn't mean it's right. Just because you believe something doesn't mean it's correct. Just because you don't believe in something or haven't been taught something, that doesn't mean it's wrong. Or it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But we think that because we're taught something and everyone else agrees on it, that it's right. And those are the same things that are keeping you, along with those 10,000 people that believe the same thing, in the same emotional and mental chaos that you're always in. And I always tell people, anytime you sit there and blame somebody else, that's the fear. That's the not responsibility. Anytime you point the finger and say, well, they did this to me, or she did this, or I'm going to get hurt doing this. Anytime it goes away from you, we're not taking that. And I know it's scary, right? We're sitting there and saying, oh my God, Miss Raina, you're asking me to do something that I've never done before in my life. But yeah, that's part of the fun though. Think about how we would be if most of humanity, which a lot of it, but say like all of humanity, never wanted to venture out. If we always were so afraid of what's that movie, with the cavemen and stuff? It was a Disney movie, and the dad was always so afraid to go out and out of the cave, and I forgot what it was called, the Croods or something like that. And the daughter was so adventurous, and she wanted to try new things and go explore. And the dad was so set on protecting his family and not doing anything that he kept his family sheltered their whole lives. And finally, it took her courage to sit there and say, but I want something different, and she faltered, she failed, she did all these things that we perceive to do. And even her family turned against her and said, you screwed up, you did this and you did that. And in the end, it all came together, and everything that happened, the new place that they lived, the wonderful, the education, the friends that they met, all these different things that happened to them, and they survived because the idea that she wanted something different. And so it's silly. It's the silliest thing. If you've never watched the movie, watch the movie, because that is what you're doing to yourself. When you are controlled by fear, when you run away from truth, when you run away from truly who you are due to fear, due to these ideas that, well, I'm going to be punished, or this is going to happen to me, or blah, blah, blah. When you do these things, it is because you have the idea, and the movie is uncanny. Like, I laugh at it. I think it's a great movie. I really do. And I'm sure there's thousands out there, but this one popped into my head right now. And I just think it is. But people, you cannot pawn off, because I know, living with anxiety, I know how it feels. Like, there was times in my life, that I would hate to go in crowds because of who I was, and feeling all the different personalities and all of the chaos, the emotional and mental chaos of everybody coming at me. And if I'm in a crowd of 10,000, feeling 10,000 different energies coming at me, and I get that, but I can't blame everything on me or everything on people in order to do that. So I had to find a way to take responsibility of my life and say, okay, these are my challenges. Hey, I'm dyslexic. How many times do I mess up on the show and say things backwards, or say a sentence that makes no sense? And I know you guys are good at pointing that out and laughing at it, but I could sit there and blame and live in fear every single day and sit there and say, well, people are going to laugh at me, and what if I do this, and what if I mess up, and what if I do all these things? Well, guess what? I do, and I have the best time. My dyslexia has helped me so many times in life because it's an amazing gift that I've learned to use to benefit my life instead of fear it and say, oh, well, I have a disability, I can't do it. Well, I'm ADHD, which now everybody in the world says they have ADHD. And well, I can't do anything because I have ADHD. And I have people say, well, I'm on disability. Why? Because I have ADHD. And I said, what? Are you kidding me? Well, yeah, I don't think like others, so I can't do anything. And I sat there and I said, I was flabbergasted, because this is a prime example of somebody giving up, not taking responsibility, and blaming some idea of why they can't succeed. And in reality, they are so afraid to even try that they'd rather just use the excuse of something silly like that to stop them from their lives. And you know, I get it. I get it. There's nothing in life that you can't overcome. Nothing. I don't care how bad your anxiety is, how bad claustrophobia is, how bad anything is in your life. I mean, I see people that have Special Olympics, old war veterans that have both their legs blown off and stuff, or have you know, and they're out there playing sports and doing things. And I see people that have, you know, certain physical disabilities with their hands and arms or whatever, and they're still out there doing things and working harder than ever. So the excuses have to stop. Stop blaming it on a god or goddess, on a universe, a governor, a president, you know, whatever it is that your mom, your dad. Hey, you know what? I was a drug baby when I was with my biological parents. Does that mean that, oh, I'm a drug baby and I, you know? No, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything unless you give it power. Your fear has power because you have allowed that ownership to be taken from you and into those ideas. You know, if you want to be in full command of yourself, then stop lying to yourself. Authenticity comes from truth. That's what authenticity means. It means truth of self. And that doesn't mean that because you believe something, that means you're being authentic. That doesn't mean because you're going with the flow, that means you're being authentic. Anytime you judge, anytime you judge someone else, or judge an idea, or stop yourself, or, you know, or have this chaos, or get angry due to what someone does to you, or this happens, or anything like that, you walk away from authenticity. And you know what? Your insecurities come out. I mean, I've met some really wonderful people, you know, throughout my lifetime so far. And I'm still young, and I'm sure I'm going to meet some really more amazing people. But I always see one thing in common with everybody: their insecurity due to their fears, or their fear due to their insecurities, I should say. And, you know, so many people out there, even in some of the nicest places, I'll have somebody come up and start talking to me, and, you know, and it either goes two ways with me. Either they try to outprove me, that they're stronger, smarter, better than me because they know who I am, or I have someone that's so insecure to meet me that I'm like, okay, I'm like, relax, take it, you know, I put one pant leg on, and this is the idea behind it. And we have to be able to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to start changing myself, because these insecurities are going to get to me where my conditioning has control over me. So if we look at it and I say, well, if my mind always tells, because how many of us has that voice that says, well, you'll never succeed, you're just going to fail, it's going to happen again. See, if you go and date someone, they're going to cheat on you. They're going to do this to you. You know, it's going to happen. It's only, you know, only special people succeed. Only special people, you know, only God-gifted people, or only talented people do this or do that. You know, and so what chance do I have? That's the victim. That's the conditioning. That's the idea behind it. You know, the voice inside our head can go one or two ways. You can either be in command of it, or you can be a victim to it. And people who are successful are in life, and I'm not talking about business, I'm talking about life, relationships, loving themselves, confidence, friendships, everything, are in command of their thoughts. People that aren't are victimized by their own mind. And you know what? You will purposely find out all those people that'll prove to you why you don't deserve what you deserve. And honestly, I think that everybody deserves, what they want. But we're so busy chasing these ideas of trying to be cool or trying to be the person rather than working on ourselves that we spend multiple lives. Do you know why we have so many lives through our evolution? It's because it takes us so many lives to slap ourselves in the head and wake up and say, hey, it didn't have to take this long. It's just because you chose not to. And those lessons in themselves, we have so many things to learn, but we always have that freedom of choice of when we want to get out of those lessons. And I know I've done shows on that. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to talk about that. But I've done many shows on that, on when our choices of freedom due to our evolution is going to happen. But that's why we give ourselves them or our excuses. That's why we live them daily. When I always say, when does it start? It starts in infancy. Our mom and dad, our concerns, because how many parents out there teach their kids fear instead of love, instead of understanding? They do, because we yell at them, we tell them no. Oh, well, I had this happen, so I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen to them. And we become so afraid that it's going to happen to them that we actually instill the fear in them instead of teach them not to do what we've done. And we do it all the time. I mean, I see it. Even I've had it done. I remember with my family, my dad did certain things with me and my sister, and so did my mom, out of the fear that it was going to happen because they didn't want it to happen, that it actually instilled it in us. And I used to sit there and be like, where did I get this from? Why am I acting like this right now? What is it that I'm doing that where did it come from? And then one time I remember I was working on myself over a situation, and I went back to visit myself in Chicago, or my family in Chicago. I can't visit myself in Chicago. See, there's my dyslexia. Let's laugh. And I went to go in to visit my family in Chicago, and then all of a sudden it slapped me in the face, and I saw it. And I was like, I got it. That's where I got it from. And you know what? Once I was able to see it, once I was able to see that it was my parents' fear, not mine, it was my parents' fear that was conditioned to us, then all of a sudden I was able to release it. And the fear didn't do it. It was their vibration, their emotional chaos, their experience. Because, we think that we're doing what's best for somebody else by trying to stop them from learning. And that's not true. And that people have to learn. I don't know how many times I could sit here and say this stuff till I'm blue in the face, whether it be to my ex-protege Caleb or to any of the students that I've taught, or anybody that I've ever taught. I could sit there and say it till I'm blue in the face. And sometimes they just don't get it until they go through it and experience it. And so we have to take a look at things. Well, it's their vibration. It's their thing. It's their way of, they think that they're trying to do what's best, but they're really creating the thing. So I always say, well, if it starts in infancy, then go back to that time. Go back to the time that you first remember. And maybe even sometimes have chats with your parents, have chats with your childhood friends. Because, hey, we know that kids are mean, right? We get laughed at, we get teased. I mean, I know if you're a boy, right? If you're a boy and you're sensitive, you learn really quickly not to cry, because other boys and even girls laugh at you and say, you're not a man if you cry. And I'm hoping life is changing. I'm really hoping with these younger generations that they're not doing it. Actually, I was talking to a client of mine, and and his son is very sensitive, and he's a good dad. He really is. And he made a comment. He's like, oh, well, he's too sensitive. I got to toughen him up. And I slapped him on the back. I was like, hey, you let your son be who he is, because you trying to train him into who you are is going to create more problems for him. And he actually stopped, and I saw him look. And he's like, yeah, well, you know how us, like he was raised in old school and everything like that. And he's like, but I saw the wheels turning. And then I think he realized, oh, wow, I didn't really realize I was doing that. And so, sometimes our best intentions, as we say, is doing it, but we have to realize that that's where it starts from. So we always go back to our foundation. We always go back to our childhood, because in infancy, what are we doing? We're absorbing everything, right? We're looking at everything in the world and we're absorbing everything. Even if we're not consciously aware of it, we're looking, we're absorbing. We're like, if you ever have a baby, what do they look? They look at what you're doing, right? And they look, even dogs do it. They tilt their head and they're observing human behavior, because they're absorbing and they're getting to know their surroundings. And so how you act, what you say, what you're afraid of, all goes into that conditioning. And that's why you react to it. They always say we become like our parents the older we get, right? Well, that's the reason why. Because when we're young, we're rebellious. We're going to do our own thing. No, because those ingrained, conditioned beliefs are just waiting to get a chance to make their way to the surface. And slowly and slowly and slowly, they start to do it. And it comes with experience. You start to come with experience, and then you start to say, well, my parents were right, my mom was right on that, my dad was right, or my teacher was right. And slowly those conditionings start to become reality. And even the conditionings that causing the chaos, not just the ones that are building experience, but the ones that are building the chaos, come with it too. And that's why we stress out. That's why we worry. That's the reason why we live in so much fear. We learn as a child to become vulnerable, because we are vulnerable. And people tell us, through social conditionings of gender alone. I mean, girls are supposed to do this, act a certain way, dress a certain way. Guys are supposed to do this, act a certain way, dress a certain way. And we start to realize that we can't be our authentic self, because everybody in the world is telling us who to believe, or what to believe in, what to think, what to wear, what to do, what kind of job we should have, who we should marry, and everything. And how exhausting is this? I mean, how many of us just went straight through school? How many of us just went straight through school and into a job and everything, and into the 9 to 5 and everything, got me, and then look, because we just thought that's what we were supposed to do. And I know you love your family. I know you love your children. I know you love these things. Maybe you don't like your job too much. Maybe you're tired of the 9 to 5 or whatever, but so many of us do it. So many of us just do the commands out of nothing, because that's what we're there for. So our fears have to look, and we have to be able to look at it and understand it. I was talking about social and school life, all the time, are reinforced by it, because if we do something and we're laughed at it, then that tells us, that builds the insecurity, that builds the fear, that builds the seed of doubt, that, that we aren't good. And, one of the things that I hope through evolution we get away from, I really hope we get away from this popular versus nerd type thing, because when so many of us, when we're young, we deem being popular as the thing to be, and myself included, I was guilty of it at times in my life. And if we're not part of the popular crowd, and we don't get good grades, or we do but we're not this, and so many, we don't get the girls or the boys or this or that, we have so many different situations that go on. Those are the foundations to what we're going to be as a child. Grades are another thing that we do. You're not going to be smart enough in life. You're not going to be challenged enough in life. You're not going to be able to go out there and do the things you want, because you didn't get good grades. And if you were one of those that struggled in school, and you're struggling to be successful, let's say in business now, maybe there's a connection between the two, because I'll tell you, I've had so many people walk through my doors over the years that I've seen that connection, that they didn't do well in school, and because the teachers told them that they weren't going to amount to anything, or because they were constantly getting yelled at and constantly being laughed at, that when they went to go get jobs or try to do anything, they had no self-esteem, no confidence, because they were already told 18 years of their life that they're already going to be a failure. And how can we not have fear when 18 years of our young adult life has told us that we're not going to be anything because of these A's, B's, and C's on a sheet of paper? And you have to let that go. That, hey, yes, grades, education does help in many forms of many ways. I am a full advocate of education, but that doesn't mean because you didn't get the best grades, that doesn't mean you can't be successful. There are late bloomers. There are so many different types of ideas. There are people that drop out of high school, and I'm not suggesting this at all. It's very few, but sometimes people drop out of high school and they become the most successful, richest people in the world. And that you have to learn getting to know yourself through truth instead of fear will allow you to see what it is you're capable of. I mean, how many of us know what we're capable of? How many of us understand our true potential? You can't. If you live in fear, if you live in this would have, could have, should have, and blaming everybody and judging everybody and doing all these things, you will never, ever see your true potential. Ever. Ever, ever. Why? Because it's clouded by emotion. And how many times have I said, the moment you're emotional, you've already lost the battle. You've already lost it. The moment you've made up your mind to be emotional, whether it's you like someone already, even though there's red flags, or you don't like something, even though there's that, or you've made up your mind, or you're angry or upset or sad or whatever, the moment you're emotional, you've already lost the battle and you cannot think clearly. And that's just not Miss Raina. There's scientific proof all over the world proving that too. It's how our brain works. It's how our emotional centers work and everything. And so, everything you've experienced as a child, will set you up for that adulthood. But it's up to the adult in you to put to rest the child or the childhood. Our experiences were meant to teach us and help us grow and to be stronger. But our society has taught us to be weaker and to become a victim and to blame others and to yell. And that's why we fight over politics and religion and with each other, and why we can't have people that disagree with us, or we think that, that life should be a certain way. And if you go to date someone, there's all these rules and all this stuff. And that because of that. And so you have the ability as an adult to say, hey, this is now that I'm going to take responsibility for myself, that I'm going to start noticing where my fears are, where they come from, and put them to rest, to realize that there's no reason to be afraid of it. There's absolutely no reason to be afraid of whatever experiences that we have gone through. Yes, some are very traumatic. Yes, there are some. I know some people that have been raped and shot and stabbed and stuff and beat up and bullied and all sorts of stuff. And yes, sometimes it is a scary world. But that doesn't mean that you can't go out there and make it a wonderful world. The choice is yours, and you have to be able to make that choice, but you can't make that choice unless you take responsibility for your life. And I really hope that you start to do, because, I know what it's like to live in fear. I really do. So I sympathize with you guys on that extent. But I'm also saying, get up, start taking responsibility for yourself, put on your big girl panties and start to be you. Start to look at truth. Start to question everything you've been taught, everything you believe in, everything in your life, start to question. And you're going to find that everything that you think has been put in by somebody else. And even if you started that journey already, even those things that you're expanding on have also been put on by somebody else. All these roads have been created by people and have been passed down. And it's your job to figure out what fits with you. And remember, again, just because we have something that fits with us, that doesn't mean that it can't create fear and chaos in us. The only thing that I always say this over and over, the only thing that we should ever believe in is in ourselves. And when you learn to do that and take responsibility for ourselves, the fear will dissipate. All right, everybody, that is tonight's show. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. Check out the YouTube channel, as we said earlier. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com. Sign up for the newsletter to receive special hidden shows, VIP access, and special guest offers when we have guests. Email me at transcendentaltransformations@gmail.com with any of your questions or anything. Make make sure you visit the W4CY.com website, and always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our ability or our talent that makes us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you and have a wonderful day.